This episode of the Pinkbike podcast is sponsored by Faction Bike Studio. That also happens to be who we'll be interviewing today to find out exactly what a bike studio does, as well as talk a little bit about the future of the sport. Enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to the Pinkbike podcast. We've got a special edition today. We've got two people from Faction Bike Studios here. We've got Erick, Auger and Julien Boulais. They're both over in Quebec. And Faction Bike Studios, you might have seen some of their projects over the last couple of years. They've gained some notoriety with Nico Mullally. They've been helping him out with his Frameworks project. They also made a 32-inch wheeled concept bike. They're kind of a one-stop shop for companies that want to do some development, maybe, I guess you call it out-of-house development, out of mountain bike development, but they can do a huge range of things. So we're going to be chatting with them about exactly what they do and then some trends that we're seeing in mountain biking and, yeah, just where we think things are going. But welcome, Julien and Erick. Thanks for coming.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike, for having us.
Yeah. But before we really get in too deep to all the new tech trends and things, let's just set the stage and let people know what Faction Bike Studio is. Like, what's Faction Bike Studio? What do you guys do and how did you get started?
So we are, as you were mentioning, doing work for different bike companies. So we were founded in 2010. I think in that era, there was a spark that could be happen. It was the era where we had access to outside technology and reach out people throughout the world with Skype at the time. And I've always been working in the bike industry, and I saw the need of pushing the boundaries of bicycle design. So I'm an engineer by trained, and I've always been designing bikes as long as I can remember. And I wanted to offer that to different companies throughout the world. So this is where the idea came about.
Cool. And then now, 2010, so do some math, 16 years later,
Yep.
And the company now, you have, I think I saw on your site, 20 engineers and 6 industrial designers. Is that right?
Yeah, total, we're just around 30 people. We put a lot of emphasis on the people that we have on our team. So the biggest problem worldwide, even with bike companies, is hiring people that understand what bicycle is and what bicycle design is. And there's no school nowhere in the world that can teach you that. So most people in the industry will learn by having a job and learning over a long period of time. And at Faction, we've been able to create talent, being able to recruit the people that had the skill set, the passion, and push them to another level where we could train them as experienced engineer that have been working in the bicycle industry for maybe 20 years.
Oh, yeah. That's super useful. I bet some listeners are probably be surprised to learn that there are bike companies that don't have in-house engineers. Like I can think of a few off the top of my head that they work with engineers overseas, usually Taiwan or wherever the bikes are being made, but they don't have someone that actually comes in every day. So is it that kind of mid to smaller size company that typically comes to you for projects, or do you deal with a whole wide range?
At first, I would say that we were dealing with smaller companies. And as the time has gone and the expertise and the number of employees, which has deployed a lot of capacity and expertise for us, we became much more attractive with bigger brands that wants to have the making sure that they can get the project on time and on budget. And we are working with R&D group at some of our clients, and we have some clients that have decided to fully externalize the design and engineering services.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I could see it also for even special projects. If you have a big company, but you kind of want you want to experiment with something, you don't want to take your resources that are working on the next year's projects. They could contact you guys and say, hey, we have this idea. Does this work? And then I've seen, like I said, we've seen the pictures from Nico Mullally's downhill frame development using some cool additive manufacturing and also the 32-inch wheel concept bike. Are those made in-house too? Do you have manufacturing capabilities in your facility, or do you kind of have other contractors that do that?
We do. For us, the goal was speed to market, or should I say speed to testing. So it was really important to be able to prove out the ideas that we had as quickly as possible. And that's why we ended up using CNC machining and structural adhesive to be able to produce that. So yes, they are produced in-house in our laboratory.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's say I decide to finally start up Mike's Bikes. Mike Levy and I used to tease about that. That was gonna be our next thing. We're gonna start Mike's Bikes, and so say I'm gonna start a company, and I don't have anything except money, but I want you to design me a modern cross country bike from start to finish. You probably can't say exact numbers, but can you say what that would cost or what that would look like? Like, how does that process work?
Cost-wise, I guess we can't talk too much to it because it would be very dependent on project. I think it could be very different from one to another. We really adapt basically on what the client needs, and I think we could start from anything from just a drawing on a napkin and make it happen at the end of the day. But we adapt to where they actually bring value and expertise. So you mentioned before, Mike, that some that you know top of mind don't have necessarily an R&D department. Maybe they're super strong on the marketing and the sales side. So working with them, we can definitely support like engineering and even industrialization, making sure the product is up to the standard and the level of performance they're seeking. While some other ones, if they're like an engineering group where they're very strong on engineering, but maybe they're a little weaker on product market fit and making sure that they have the strong business case to move it forward, maybe we can support that there at the beginning and then kind of move towards that engineering collaboration with them. So I guess very long answer to say it's a bit different depending on who they are, but I think the important part is to adapt and keep the strength and the flavor that these like our partners are bringing, because otherwise I think it would be very rapidly becoming all the same thing. And so if we can kind of keep what's unique about them is definitely the most important part.
Yeah, on that same topic, that kind of brings up, so say you're working on obviously bikes from multiple companies. How do you keep kind of secrets? How do you have one guy working at one desk on something for Nico and someone working for someone else that might be aiming at the same goal? How do you keep things separate and make sure that there isn't, shared secrets? You're not leaking one person's design to the other. And how do you keep that difference, I guess?
You're touching an important topic, and we put confidentiality on the forefront of our business model. So that's why there's not a lot of information you can find on Faction Bike on the website or even on the web, generally speaking. And we always wanted to empower our clients to take ownership of the work we are doing for them. So that has been really important. And one question that comes up a lot, like, is there a specific Faction Bike studio styling or something we can recognize you by? And the answer is no. We try to make a story for each brand we're working with, and we create like the brand identity, the product strategy, and all the design philosophy into it. And few people have mistaken us for projects that we haven't done, and told us that we should be copying a certain bike that we actually made.
Yeah, I guess, that's the tricky thing too. There's the balance of, you guys want to promote yourselves, obviously, because you want more customers, but you also don't want to be so in the front that the company doesn't have their identity. Like if it's it's another Faction bike, people will be like, why don't I just buy something from Faction, even though you're not a bike manufacturer? But I could see that kind of public perception is kind of tricky.
And that's probably why I think the partnership with Frameworks is so great. I think for all of us is also for on the Faction side, being able to talk a bit more and have it public facing on what is some of the stuff that we're working with Nico. So this is interesting because for once we can actually talk about it and be public about it. So this is very interesting, and we're looking forward to do more of those, either collaboration or projects like we did with Big Ben, that 32-inch prototype, where we can actually have the conversation and spark the discussion as well for the industry and for customers to look at.
Yeah, with Nico, it's been really neat to see kind of each race, different bikes show up over the course of the season, and kind of like, look what they helped him make this time, and kind of see his, from his start with just the more basic Frank the Welder frames, which were still cool and really neat, industrial
Yep.
looking, but now they're getting, more and more refined each race almost, it looks like, which is kind of neat to see. Did he approach you or did you approach him? How did that come to be?
I think we approached him. We've known each other, and the idea was sparked by David, who was in charge of my marketing back then. And it was pretty clever because we were seeking ways to talk about what we were doing without disclosing any secrets. And I think it was the perfect moment because Nico was also looking. He was really curious, wanted to see which material, floating brakes, high pivot, low pivot, mid pivot, and trying to understand. And he had a really good feeling, and we could put numbers on his feeling. And having such the highest feedback we can get, either from like team members or ASA, is pretty insightful for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in terms of like what we do on the engineering side with FEA analysis, and I think Erick, you can speak to it better than I can, but I just know for us, at least in terms of gathering information and load cases, by having these guys and being able to use instrumented bikes with their level of riding is always interesting, because as the sport is evolving, the rider going faster and faster and kind of pushing the boundaries, we're able to stay very relevant and adapt that constantly with the forces we're seeing. And you guys covered when we were at Red Bull Ramp Ardline last year with them and with the instrumented bike, and we were able to gather very insightful data. So it's interesting on projects we deliver with them, but what's interesting about it is also that mutual benefit of us also being able to learn from them as much as they can learn from us. So it's just very good.
Yeah, it's neat to see. Yeah, that FEA, for people that haven't seen it, it's worth going back and checking it out. But basically, Faction strapped a bunch of sensors onto Ace's bike. He did hardline with it, and then they were able to see the forces that are going through that bike when he's hitting 60, 100-foot jumps and massive drops, and that's the most extreme use case that bike would see. I mean, maybe an amateur rider might be putting some weird forces in it when they're just hucking to flat, but like Ace is putting some forces through it, so it's kind of neat to have that benchmark and knowing that the bike you guys helped design can withstand that. And also for future projects, I can imagine, even not even just for downhill bikes, but for all bikes, it's probably super useful real world laboratory, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's always good to strike the balance between what a pro can do on a bicycle and what like a good amateur rider can do. And the loads are not that different. They just like happen much more time. And a pro rider is a lot more skill and soft on the landing, but it's really important because most of the time the bikes we're designing needs to cover a wide range of use. So that's always good to have those data we can collect.
Yeah, definitely. And along those lines, what kind of projects are people coming to you most these days? Are you getting a bunch of people wanting e-bikes, you getting road bikes, mountain bikes, everything? Is there one segment where everyone wants this all of a sudden?
It's waves. We always say that we are riding the first wave of a new trend, and where even companies haven't put their effort into understanding what it means. So it will always takes them, one model year or two model year cycle to really become expert, and they often come to us in at the beginning. So we did like carbon, full suspension, fat bikes, gravel bikes, e-bikes. We were kind of there as soon as the market emergence for these trends happened.
Yeah, that's neat. So, speaking of e-bikes, so we're obviously seeing a huge growth of that. So you're able to your role in that type of development project, obviously the company would say what motor and battery and all that would like, but then you would kind of help them put it into the frame and do the packaging and the development of that. That's why they would come to you essentially?
Yeah, and it looks simple from the fact that most of the systems that we have today are closed system, which means it comes in an ecosystem. But understanding the limitation, the effect with the structure and how to package it. There's a lot into it. And we also see a trend that I can let Julien speak about, like is seeing, where e-bikes will be evolving with bike manufacturers in the future.
Yeah, I think to that effective wave, I think that we're seeing is within the e-bike wave. There's been a couple as well. So I think at the beginning it was mostly about integrating those e-system, the motor, the battery to like what is a bicycle architecture. But now I think there is a lot of those options out there today in the market, and as we're seeing some motor and e-system players really taking a leadership position, then what is really differentiating your brand if you're, the 12th option of a Bosch driven full suspension mountain bike with 150 mil of travel and a 66 head angle. So it's something that we're seeing evolve a little bit, where some of our clients now and with our electrical engineering services are seeking kind of a higher level of integration. So I think probably the players that we'll see win in the future are the ones that have been able to bring a little bit more integration within the full system, more than just being, again, like a battery, a motor, and what is just a full suspension frame. And
Right.
so, and interestingly enough, there's been I was reading the site today. There's that new Orbea that came out, and I think I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this, Mike. But just they seem to be in that direction of all, kind of differentiating with a much more integrated solution, where I feel it's helping them clearly stand out and differentiate themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's neat when you can get that to work, especially, I mean, in the case of that Orbea, they were able to get Fox TQ motors and then Orbea themselves work together on it, which you don't see all the time. A lot of times you get a bike, it's got Shimano drivetrain and, Fox suspend, but they don't all kind of talk together, which I think with an e-bike, it's important if you can make them all talk together, because, I'm not a fan of having a bike just bristling with batteries everywhere. And if you can tie them all into that giant battery you have, I think that integration makes sense. It's kind of, it can simplify things and just makes a cleaner, more modern bike. So that bike was interesting to see kind of how they were able to do that, because I think it's not as common as, again, as people would think, because you just have these, massive companies and they don't always want to come to the table and chat together. It's kind of like you just stick them on a frame and then you go. But, how many bikes are out there that have you could have a SRAM derailleur, wireless derailleur, and you could have a Fox dropper post, and those batteries don't work together. The Shimano battery doesn't work with the Fox drop, all those things are, if you can connect them in, I think that is kind of neat. That I wouldn't mind a little bit of standardization is probably not the right word, but even just some communication. Because if we could all just have if derailleur batteries are just a derailleur battery, like a AA or whatever, that would be kind of nice. So
yeah, and then I don't want to add too much of an extra layer, but you can bring in the accessories as well, which are also a whole different set of other standards and other batteries and the like. So it's what we're seeing, at least with some of our clients coming to us, is to bring that level of integration to the e-bike itself, but even also bringing the accessories in and seeing it more as a complete solution rather than just seeing it as a bike on which you're adding a motor. So
yeah, exactly. Even you guys do some commuter stuff too. I can imagine lights and those type of things. If your lights are powered by the battery, then you might as well just have it all connected.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. And we kind of see the trend where the bicycle industry, with some of the bigger player, will follow the trend that we've been observing in the automotive industry with electric cars, where the one that are winning that race are the one who owns the hardware and the software and build it from the ground up as an integrated system, and not like a bunch of electronic control units that are linked together coming from different companies, and they don't talk together, and you need to have a translator between all the components of your product. And of course, not all companies will be able to go this route, and they will still rely on complete systems that are currently available or that will be available in the future from the big players. But some of the biggest brand will push the integration to a new level.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, kind of saw that the early specialized e-bikes, they were kind of some of the first ones that came out where they actually had the the heads up display where you could have all your information. It took a little bit for it ended up being the motor manufacturers that kind of stepped in and did that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's a good point of how that it is a feature that people might not know they want it, but then once they ride a bike, and there is a difference between just kind of like a smashed together assortment of things that it's a bike, but you can tell they didn't really talk to each other. So yeah, the integration's kind of interesting. Um, Another thing that Faction offers, I saw on your site, and speaking with you guys, the benchmark tests. And so you have basically a library of bikes that you've tested and have things like stiffness and other aspects that companies can basically send you a frame and have it compared against them. Is that how that works?
Yeah, and it became from an internal need at first, where when you're designing a new bicycle, you need to have objectives in terms of performance, stiffness, weight. And when you have like objectives that are not um, correctly benchmarked, or you don't understand what you're seeking or what's the goal, you end up making the wrong decision for the product, and it ends up being a product that is deceiving on the market and doesn't meet like a user requirement. So getting the right data at the beginning is really important, and not to have any speculation. And it's part of the industry. Like everyone does benchmarking. No one will really say it that they've got their idea inspired by another brand, but you just look at the bike industry as a whole, and everyone gets better year over year. So they all learn from one another. So the goal of the tear down benchmarking service that we're putting together is to offer unbiased data that is always measured with the same protocol, ensuring the quality of the data that the industry can rely on.
And maybe just one correction, Mike. It's not necessarily that they're sending over their frame, although they could, but it's mostly to have those report done. We take the step forward on selecting highly demanded product, and then we produce the report, and then each company can get access to it and purchase the report right away.
Oh yeah,
Because
interesting.
when we chatted about with the product teams at different brands, what we were seeing is, as Erick explained, like most of them will they'll do the competitive benchmarking all in silos. So all of those companies are buying their competitor product, analyzing them, and they all have a finite budget to do so. However, what we notice is that they track the budget of actually purchasing the bike, but they don't track so much the amount of engineering time that is then deployed to really analyze the bike and do all the measurements and all the testing that goes into it. And for having done it ourselves, we know how time consuming that can be. And also for me in a previous role, being in a large company that was doing a lot of benchmarking, like I've seen firsthand the amount of time that is dedicated towards that, where, it got us thinking, what if that time was spent on really value add task, and for the engineering team to really focus on more of the innovation side of things rather than just taking measurements and trying to find accurate data. So I think it's a real strength if people are able to access trustable information right away. They're saving time, and even also previous experience of being in difficult conversation between engineering and marketing on weight target and what's achievable and these kind of thing. If you get access to data right away, you're able to have those conversations be much faster, and then again just speed up your process and be working on real value add things. So I think that's what we were trying to solve for, is just seeing that inefficiency in the industry and feel like we could play a role in helping the industry as a whole get better but faster. So that's kind of what sparked it as well for us.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any like in-house test riders that just ride the bikes to kind of see what their impressions are of the bikes that you've tested? I'm always curious as a bike tester myself, it's hard to sometimes parse out what you're feeling. You could be like, this bike feels really stiff, but then you realize it's the stiff wheels or it's the tire pressure. There's so many things. But do you ever do any kind of real world stuff just to kind of correlate, when you did the benchmarking in the lab, this bike is X stiff, but then on the trail, how it feels? Do you do something like that to kind of
We do, but it's so subjective because
Yeah.
of where, like the riding style and everything. So probably one of the best example we took like handlebar stiffness and just like the feeling that people have and how they can communicate. It's quite different. So it's kind of an area where we don't think we have added value of communicating this information, and we leave that portion of the work to our clients and product managers or engineers or even test riders that they have or racers to make up the assumption and have the data that can correlate their feelings.
Hmm.
But we will never cross the line of like saying this bike feels like this or feels like that. We like tear
Right.
down benchmarking is all about measurable facts.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
not really taking a stance in what we're evaluating to just what Erick said, and I think it's something that enables us to be a bit more detached from it and really just provide focus on facts rather than impression. And then, yeah, as Erick said, they can just make up their correlate both of those things. And the good thing is also we've noticed that many of them will tend to keep the bike they test in good working order so they can resell them and kind of contribute that to the budget. But
Hmm.
on our side, we feel that by being able to use the bike and push it all the way to destructive testing, we're able to bring a level of insight that they wouldn't gather themselves.
Right.
So it's that also helped to kind of bring more depth to it. So also it's a bit heartbreaking to break these brand new bikes, and
Yeah.
sometimes like most of us wants to get to ride them, and we have to stick to the process. But I think it's
But
for the
yeah.
greater good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're super useful. I think it's another thing that not everybody knows that plenty of bike companies are out there paying, full retail or close to retail for their competitors' products just to have some sort of benchmarking. I know that a lot of times a new fork comes out and company X comes out with a new fork. Well, company Y is they're on the list to buy that fork because they want to see what's going on, which makes sense. It's competition. I'm sure in the car world, I'm sure, new car
Yeah,
comes
it's the
out.
same.
Yeah.
So your competitor is probably your first client.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're one of the early adopter, early purchasers just because they want to see what you did. So.
And we took inspiration from the car industry where they have reliable outside vendors who are doing it unbiased. And so there's 3 or 4 companies, and there was nothing like that in the bike industry. So we got our inspiration from that, and this is what we're putting together for the bike industry.
Yeah, see, and I guess on the speaking of cars, are bikes the only thing that you deal with? Are there any other offshoots of Faction, where any other industries that you're in, or is it just solely bike related projects?
Bike related. It always surprises people. A few of our competitors that are also doing bicycle as external design studio will often have a diversity of industries to it makes sense from a business standpoint, where if one industry goes like not as good, you can rely on another one. But at Faction, we're solely dedicated to bicycles.
Yeah, that's neat. I guess speaking of where the industry's going and trends and things, we should dig into some of that because you all are kind of on the forefront of trends. You have an idea of what companies are asking for or what might be coming next. Are there any red flags that you're seeing or anything where companies keep coming to you saying, "Hey, we want this," but you're like, you don't want to go down that route? And red flag might not be the right word, but like 32-inch wheels is what's coming to mind. We're seeing a lot of hype around 32-inch wheels, but is that the next next big thing, or is that going to be kind of a little sub, small portion of the cross country world? Where do you see that going?
I think this one is interesting, and if we think red flags, there is a bit of a red flag for me in terms of sometimes the way the industry behave, in the sense of having a bit of that like echo of the cavern where it's a very small group of people that are very loud that seems to be dictating where the industry goes, and with that comes a lot of fear of missing out. And so I think this can create problem in the long run, because that small group, and it's not as if the bike industry is the only one that has a challenge with that. I think the whole outdoor industry, and that was backed by some research, that there is that high reliance on that small group of people that are very vocal. And so the and a lot of the people making up the product staff in bike companies are that, and the people you see at the races, and the people that are providing the comment in the Pinkbike section. So, but at the end of the day, for that industry to be healthy, you need the vast majority, those ones that are not as loud, for it to really make business sense, and so and for it to be healthy. So, as far as red flag for me, and I think we can tie it to 32 inch in some ways, is that if you're a company that is focused on XC racing and the marginal gains, and making sure that that will be the difference between making a podium and being off the podium, it makes sense that you're jumping on board. But I think with that fear of missing out, there's a lot of people that want to jump on board without asking themselves the question of, does that answer the customer needs better, and is the consumers going to be better off at the end of the day? I think some will, some others not so sure. And I think we need to push the question for those companies as well, to think of, what does that 32-inch bike means? Because it's one thing on what it means on a $12,000 bikes. It's going to be very light wheels. Your weight difference not going to be all that much, or at least more manageable. But when you think of a $2,000 bike, now how would that look like? And
yeah,
so
40-pound hardtails are probably not the future, hopefully.
Nope.
yeah, exactly. So it's and also just think of the whole journey for your consumer, and just what it's like to own that product. When they're going to get their first flat tires, do they have option if they break a wheel? Like, how long is it going to take for them to get easy access to the replacement part? So here, I don't want to say that it's never going to happen, or anything. And I think it would be a tough one to answer. I think everyone these days are trying to make their prediction as to where it's going to go, and I think it proves difficult, because we've seen it with 29. Like, not everyone was on board, and look at it today. So it's tough to
Mm.
really have a strong idea on it. But I think it's not all, it doesn't make sense necessarily for everyone. And I think brands should be more critical of really asking the question of if it's a fit for their client, rather than just being a fear of missing out on
Yep.
that trend that's coming up. Yeah.
And that's the reason why we quickly, internally, we said we cannot just speculate on what a 32-inch wheel feels like and what are the benefits. And this is happening a lot with bike brands, where they don't have the money to invest in finding out what it means. So we did that initial R&D project just to understanding the boundary and what's the place of the 32-inch in the space, and what are the application. And obviously, we're further ahead than what we've shown this summer, and understanding what application can there be in the enduro or even downhill application. Is there a real benefit, and what are the trade-offs?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it might be worth clarifying, because I think a lot of some people at least thought, we were kind of at the forefront, or trying to pushing on that trend. And to be honest, I think this was misunderstood in the way that, as Erick said, like, our positioning with 32 inches, that we had questions. We got a bunch of passionate riders internally that had questions, and we figured out, we have an R&D department, we can do these things, and we can start answering questions. And we already know our partners and clients will come to us with question, and I think we need to have answers by the time they come. So we wanted to kind of take a head start on that, and also maybe personal feedback. It's interesting for me, because having been working on the brand side, you always have to ask that question if it's going to be a commercial success. But here it's totally different. We're just like trying things, so it's pretty exciting. And at the end of the day, this is pretty much what it is for us. Big Ben was just, we're answering questions. We don't pretend we invented a trend. We don't pretend we we want that to happen. The only thing we want actually is just to answer questions. So, and we're curious. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool that you guys have the resources to do that. You know, if I still haven't
Yeah.
even gotten a ride a 32-inch wheel bike, which I'm skeptical of some of the hype because some I've obviously been through all this before with even 27.5 and 29 and
Yeah.
plus bikes, and like I do really want to ride one, but also I see all the drawbacks, and I'm not the person like you'll never ride a 29-inch wheel bike again. I was like, no, they're gonna, at least in my mind, I feel like they're gonna have their place, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, obviously, yeah, it's gotta be pretty fun to be able to kind of pursue your almost passion projects and be a little bit ahead of the curve. Speaking of ahead of the curve, are there any other trends or things that you think are coming down the pipeline that you're excited about? Just either whether personally or through faction. Like, are you excited of the direction of?
I think we've been quite excited over the past few years about a motor and gearbox combination that works together in tandem. Like the idea on paper is good, the technology is there, and we can definitely see the future of that because it makes a lot of sense for e-bikes because you're asking one brain to manage everything instead of having like two different like the drivetrain and the e-bike don't really understanding what one is doing besides the other. And I could definitely see, you know, like more and more as it will democratize. Because when you think about it, like a derailleur is a wonderful achievement in what it can do. But if you think about it, like if you would never have seen a derailleur in your life, and I was saying, okay, there's a sprocket and there's a component that will derail a chain, you would say you're crazy. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
But we put like the industry has pushed the refinement to what external drivetrains are today, and they work great. But it like gearboxes and motor integrated makes so much sense.
Yeah, I can see
yeah,
that, and I think that I mean, in my mind, it makes the most sense compared to there obviously are plenty of companies trying to put gearboxes on non-motorized bikes, and I feel like that execution never tends to work very well because the weight and the
Yeah,
everything else that goes with it. But then, yeah, add some motorized
the
assistance. I could see
efficiency.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like Pinion says you have to ride, I don't even know, 600 miles or something before it starts to feel good. You're like, well, I just bought a brand new bike. I don't have time to ride it. Like, I want it to be good out of the box because that's, you spent so much money on it. So, yeah,
yeah. And I think that's a good example also of something that the especially with the motorized version, and that when like if you look at the consumers and what they're got, like the advantage that they're getting out of this, I think is great. Like the low maintenance that they have, how silent the bike can be, especially if it's run with a belt, and the riding dynamics. Like we had the chance to work on some projects with those product and being able to try them, and it's extremely impressive. So I would say, definitely personally, I'd be very excited for that to keep pushing forward. And with the patent watch that we're doing as well, I think there's some movement there, from a few key companies. So I think that should hopefully materialize in the future. And I think us as riders, we'd be better off, and like all riders would kind of benefit from that. So that'd
yeah,
be pretty cool.
we need to see. Then also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of additive manufacturing and different frame manufacturing techniques. I think we've seen a lot of smaller companies kind of use additive manufacturing because it's a little bit quicker. They can make a prototype fairly efficiently and test it and then kind of go to the next stage. Do you see any of that kind of entering the mass market? Are we going to start seeing any differences in the way that frames are made, whether it's carbon or aluminum from like at a large scale? Or are those techniques going to kind of stay with the smaller, more boutique companies?
Yes, some of it will bleed through mass production and larger volumes. So, the real benefit is not necessarily like speed or time. It's really about the tooling investment. If you're building like bounded lugs that are made from additive manufacturing, you don't have any overhead in your tooling, which enables you to bring a lot more features at lower prices. And that's why we have seen a lot of like pretty interesting full suspension bikes coming from the handmade bike shows. that we weren't seeing before. We would only see hardtails. And now you're giving tools for like a DIY person or a small company to be relevant and to bring some innovation. That being said, uh, we have been working on ways where this technology can move forward, and there's a lot of advantage from the fact that it's cleaner. If you take a aluminum welded bike, you need to weld it. Like it's not really like when it's done by hand, you have a lot of variability in the process. You need to do heat treatment, you need to do alignment. As a bounded frame for us takes only 10 minutes to put together. And it's the straightest frame I've ever seen. Like you cannot achieve that this level with welded frames.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Yeah, it does seem, I do like that aspect of it. I mean, it feels like the handmade bike shows have gotten so much better over the last
Oh
five,
yeah,
10 years. Now it's,
amazing.
we get excited to go to them. We like going to them before, but now you go and you're like, wow, look what this person made. Because it used to just be titanium hardtails, which were cool, but
Yeah.
now it's like this person made this wild full suspension thing because they can do it essentially in their home.
And what I like is kind of like really creative. Like there's no company with like sales in stakes that would want to explore a specific like layout of a kinematic. And these guys, they are building one-off bikes, and they can get as crazy as they want. And for us, it all also kind of becoming a seed of, okay, is this idea promising from like a mass production product in the future?
Mhm.
So it's quite interesting. A lot of
Yeah.
inspiration can be get there.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any kind of dream project that you guys wish that somebody would come to you with? Is there any you say, "Oh, I wish a company would come and ask us to do this for them because we really want to make that." Is that on your list at all?
And I think we've been really fortunate over the last 15 years because, you know, doing the bikes for frameworks is amazing. It's a dream come true. And having us like 2 years ago getting the world champ jersey, it's amazing. Also during the 2020 Olympics, we did a track bike for one of the team,
Oh,
and
nice.
it was you know, when someone comes to you and says, I want to have a bike that is made to win medals, like it's kind of like there's no limitation. Like it's there for performance only.
Yeah,
I
that's gonna be
think
neat.
we definitely been lucky in having, players of all sizes. So for, being inspired by being some of the market leaders to also working with smaller core brands that we, as rider might have affinities with, and to have those race project as well. I think we across the board we've been able to check quite a lot of
Yeah.
boxes. So it's been a great ride for sure.
And over the last year, we had such a lot of like really good in-depth conversation with bike brands as we did a few road shows with the Big Ben, the 32-inch full
Mhm.
suspension bike. We brought it to the World Cup at Mont Saint Anne, and we were booking like meeting with race team and product managers and giving them the opportunity to try it out by themselves and exchange on it. So it was really really a great year.
Yeah, that's cool to see that. I guess the one topic I would switch gears a little bit, but just because what you've created is a pretty fascinating example of, I'd say, almost high end jobs in the bike industry. Where, so say someone wants to get into the bike industry, a lot of times you hear people say, "Oh, like a career in the bike industry, there's not a lot of money. You should kind of probably just go into tech or go into something else." But what kind of path do you think that would be useful for somebody that's really passionate about bikes and want to get involved? Like, are you thinking, is there going to be a demand for more engineers in the future, industrial design, electrical engineers? Is there
Mm.
a certain avenue that you think would be useful to get more people into?
I have my idea, and I want to bridge to a service that we've been putting together over the last 2 years, which is product strategy and product management. And Julien, you can talk a little bit about it. And I think it's missing, like, from the bike industry making the right business decision to go forward with a project, because there's nothing as bad for me as having the best technical achievement but seeing it failed, on the market.
Right. Yeah, you made something amazing. It never gets off the ground because it didn't get received properly.
Mm.
Yeah, and sometimes the engineering feat is something, but then does the consumer needs it or want it at that specific time? Is that the right timing for that to come to market? Is a tricky one to handle. So, but yeah, we do have those strategic services. So, starting from product management, which is some of our client will come to us with a very specific target of a product they want at a certain price, and then we'll handle the full product development as well as the spec strategy to go alongside and for them to meet their price and objectives and deadlines. So this is something that we can do. And then on the strategic side is making sure, we've seen how many of the players in the bike industries are taking their decision based off a gut feel, which is great for a certain time. The challenge comes when you need, with over time, being able to make constantly the right decision becomes more and more difficult. And then having access to more robust data and industry's insights to that helps to really help making the right decision. So all of this to say to your question, Mike, of like the path, I think engineering is definitely one of those. Industrial design, I think, will, and especially for us as a design studio, but also don't forget that like people with marketing backgrounds and a good understanding of the market can also make their way into the industry, not just at brand, but also outside consultant like us. And this is something that it's been growing and I think increasingly needed. AI can only get you so far, and then AI yet hasn't proven their like that expertise of the very specific the bike industry, which is a pretty specific industry. So I think there's definitely value for people with great minds to
Yeah.
join the organizations like us.
That's good. Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, I like to see that, yeah, almost like outlets for people that are, with great minds or just, really intelligent people have pathways to stay in the bike industry and make cool stuff. I think that's useful. And it's good for people that, whether in high school or college, to say, hey, I can stay in the bike industry and make cool stuff. I don't have to go to work for Google or work for Lockheed Martin
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, you can do that too, and that's great. But it is nice if you're passionate about bikes. It's nice to have it be your job in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything that we're going to see that you can announce now from Faction this year that, got to make kind of cool prototypes you're rolling out, or any projects that you're able to kind of tease at that we'll see in the next few months?
I think there's definitely things that you'll see from us. Sea Otter will be presenting another prototype we're working on, so that's going to be fairly interesting. And also, we want to kind of bring an extra layer of having the product being raced there. So now that's a lot of commitment coming from me at this time, and hopefully we can make it happen. But at least that's the target and that's the goal. So there's going to be more to be discussed there. Again, in that same mindset of we know there's a lot of questions around certain topics, and we just want to dig further. So that's something worth looking into. And Mike, let's connect when we'll be down there so we can show it to you. But that will be the first I think the first thing that you guys, well, everyone could see of us coming in the near future.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, we'll be there. I know it's crazy. Seattle's coming up pretty quick, mid-April or so. So yeah, the season's gonna get rolling, and excited to see what y'all come up with.
Yeah, for us in Quebec, that's always a marquee event because it's officially the kind of the start of the season where then it should be a bit. It's nice because it's warm when we get there, and then hopefully by the time we come back, it's starting to kick into springtime. So it's always it's one that we love.
Yeah, thaw out in California, eat some burritos, and it's pretty good. So.
It's good
always
riding
fun.
too. So.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, I appreciate you coming on. It's great to chat with you, and excited to see what comes this year. It's been really interesting watching the progress of Faction in the last few years. Now that you've kind of, I don't know if mainstream is the right word, but you've definitely got your place in the bike world.
We were fairly unknown. Like, a few of our clients were saying like Faction is the the best kept secret in the bike industry. Because obviously over the time we haven't spoke, like there's a lot of bike brands who don't know us still. And it's always like being in the shadow is kind of was at the heart of our business strategy. And it has paid off because our clients now, they understand that their secret are safe with us. So it's that trust that's been built over time. So all these fun projects that we're doing is kind of a way of like for us, but also for our employees who work really hard every day to get like the recognition that they should be getting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
And also maybe some of our clients also mentioned that if they would have heard about us earlier, they would have made different decisions and they
Right,
could have
yeah.
saved a lot of money. So
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's balancing it out on making sure they're at least aware of us, but that we keep the important stuff secret. So
Yeah, no, that's great. It's cool to see. And yeah, well, good luck, and we'll see you in Seattle pretty soon. I'm excited to see what
Yep.
what things are rolling out there. So, nice. Well, thanks for
Perfect.
joining us. Yeah,
Cool.
Julien and Erick from Faction Bike Studio. And yeah, catch everybody next time.